Stats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
The minute people start really looking not only close to home, but there's some common sense here, and there's too much science right now, and there's too much data for us to be ignoring that.
He would know. That's head coach Sean Payton recovering from the coronavirus. Welcome to your latest Been There, Done That podcast. Hope you're doing well. Hope everybody's safe out there. We know sports is on the back burner, but hopefully this podcast provides some relief as I bring in my quarantine partners from all stretches of the United States. Justin Thomas, our producer, is in Utah, and my partner Scott Shanle just got done with another rendition of homeschooling in Dallas, Texas. Shanle, how are you holding up?
I'm doing okay. Now that the weather's getting a little better, I'm okay. We have some space, so I'm social distancing whenever I go outside the home, but I have a whole new appreciation for teachers, that's for sure. This teaching just my own child, doing it's a lot of work. So I have a whole new respect for what teachers go through.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's been an adjustment for so many, but especially that profession, because at a moment's notice, really, they've had to kind of revamp their game plan moving forward. Well, speaking of game plans, it's good to see Sean Payton's on the mend. Before we talk about him, Justin Thomas, how are you holding up? Our producer who has pulled down some sound. We're going to talk to Emmanuel Sanders via Colin Cowherd, and we just heard from Sean Payton in his Good Morning America interview with Michael Strahan. But it's good to hear Sean Payton's on the mend, right?
No, it definitely is. It looks like he recovered very well, and hopefully anyone else who's has symptoms is also recovering without any issues.
Shanle, you know what? I don't really have any friends who were hit with the coronavirus. I don't know anybody. Sean Payton hit me probably the hardest just because we know Sean Payton. What was your reaction when you found out that he was diagnosed with it?
Well, initially shocked, but also scared because of the unknowns about how this virus attacks certain individuals. Some people claim that they had nothing more than a fever and some harsh cold symptoms, and then obviously others have passed away from it. So I was a little bit scared because I didn't know how he would react to it and how his body would handle it, especially as we all are learning now the effects on the lungs. So my reaction was a little bit. Really a lot of shock at that moment, but glad that he's been fine and really never had any of those severe symptoms.
Yeah, it's positive to hear how he's feeling lately. He's not 100%, but definitely made big strides from a week ago. I know his new wife is a nurse, so maybe I'm sure she helped out quite a bit. But Sean Payton's going to be taken care of, and we hope obviously this country gets past this soon. Shanle, I know it's early in the process. You feel for so many people, and I'm going to say this at the beginning. I'm going to say it again and probably keep repeating it. But we know sports is not the number one priority right now. But in your gut, do you think we'll have a football season?
In my gut, I really do. I think I just heard talk this morning about NCAA football, not knowing if they're going to have football. I don't foresee this going into the fall to the point where we can't gather. I just look at China as kind of a reference. I know some people have talked about their stats not being what they're made out to be, but they went through their period in January and through February, and they're starting to get back to work and starting to reopen some businesses. So I kind of look at that as the barometer for where we'll be, and I don't think this will be an issue in the fall to delay any sports or football seasons.
Yeah, I feel for so many people. Obviously, you feel for the victims first and foremost, but on a secondary, even further down the ladder, I feel for everybody, all the kids going through the draft. You look at a Joe Burrow and all these guys that normally should be very excited. All the LSU players who are going to be picked early, they're not going to be able to have a pro day now. I mean, can you imagine, coming out of your senior year in Nebraska and you're all excited and you're kind of nervous and you're gearing up for this? I mean, how would you have felt as a college athlete having to deal with this on top of it?
Well, it's tough because, there's a lot of people, mentioning Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to be the number one pick, whether they have a pro day, 10 pro days, or they have a combine and they don't have a combine. Guys like him, this shouldn't affect them much. it's the guys in the second through the seventh rounds or undrafted guys who have been working hard and training all the way from January through February and getting ready for pro days that got canceled. Those guys are going to be the most affected because some of those guys could have really elevated their draft positioning. And then the teams are really affected. The teams, you can watch all the film you want to, and guys look like great players on tape. And there's a lot of great players out there. But as a team, you don't get to sit down and see what the personality traits are of the guys you're investing in and how they're going to fit into your locker room. So it's going to be tough for teams to invest in guys that they don't even get to sit down and talk to and see what their personal traits are like.
I don't know if the process is overrated. You try to be as in depth as you can. I heard an example though when the Cleveland Browns moved to Baltimore. Obviously, they fired Bill Belichick. They revamped the front office. Art Modell was still the owner, and Ozzie Newsome back then was the general manager. Didn't have much time, but given that his 2 draft picks that year in the first round were future Hall of Famers and Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis. Was that just kind of an outlier? Ozzie Newsome proved to be a great general manager, but does that show that maybe we overanalyze this draft prospect? That you should kind of have your whole body of work throughout the whole year of watching college football and not maybe cram towards the end. What does that say about the process, kind of given that example?
Well, I think the whole process is really overhyped, and I know I just talked about teams sitting down and talking to players. It definitely helps to see what personality guys have, but guys can also fake it too in a 10-minute interview what they're really like. So, if anything, maybe the bright spot of this is now teams won't overanalyze things, and they'll just go by what they're seeing on tape, and maybe there won't be as many busts with teams having to develop more time just sitting there and studying film more and not going by what they're seeing at pro days and guys running around in just shorts.
Yeah, I just feel like, when you look at the NFL season and you look at the way the pattern has gone in other countries, I know it's not going to be exactly the same in the United States, but I feel like football's at kind of an advantage, Scott, in a lot of ways because you can push the season. With baseball, you got to be careful not having the World Series too late. And then with hockey and the NBA, they're already delayed. That's going to get kind of crazy. We've already pushed the Olympics forward another year. Do you feel like the way football is that you can play in any kind of weather, that if the season is pushed, maybe that could be to their advantage somewhat?
Yeah, I don't really think they're worried about the seasonality of when they play. I think the one thing that Roger Goodell has shown is he does not care about coronavirus. He does not care about what's
Yeah.
going on in the world. He doesn't care about who's quarantined and who's not. They pushed through a CBA. They went through free agency as normal. He's already told everybody to shut their mouth. They're going to do the draft whether they like it or not. And if you speak out, you're going to get fined. So I think Roger Goodell has shown that come hell or high water, they're going to start the NFL season whether people like it or not. So I don't think they're going to push it back just based on that alone.
If you were the commissioner, how would you have handled not only the league right now in terms of free agency and the upcoming draft? Would you have postponed it? How would you have handled it?
Yeah, I would have postponed everything. I think at this point there shouldn't have been a CBA pushed through. There shouldn't have been free agency hadn't been started. Think about free agency. Teams were signing players without even being able to give them a physical. There's guys who think they have contracts that right now, when they show up in 2 months or a month or whenever all this gets lifted, they fail a physical, they don't get that contract. So there's a lot of things that are still up in the air based on Roger Goodell not using common sense and delaying everything. I think free agency should have been pushed back. It shouldn't even happened yet. And I think the draft can be pushed back to the end of May. There is nothing that happens this time of year that needs to be rushed. Everybody goes through the offseason. Right now, guys are either at facilities lifting weights or going through OTAs, which is practice for an hour and a half and no pads. Nothing needs to be rushed right now. I can tell you in 2011, we didn't even have a CBA. We couldn't go to the facility. So all offseason, nobody was allowed in the facility to lift weights or do anything. Guys were accountable. They did it on their own. We showed up at the first week of August, and football was still good. So I don't understand why nothing has been delayed to this point.
Do you think a huge part of it, this is kind of maybe a rhetorical question, but he's the only game in town right now, and he knows it. He knows everything else is shut off, and he's going to take advantage of it. He sure as hell can't say that, but how much of that is in the process right now?
Well, it definitely fills time. And I know, I've been kind of vocal about pushing everything back because NCAA, we all know the NCAA likes their money. They shut off March Madness. They closed down shop.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that should say it all. The NBA has been smart about it, and that's why everybody looks at Adam Silver as a much better commissioner than Goodell, because he does what seems to be normal or more sensible. And I, I get it, though. I get it, because I've had fans tell me, we need free agency, we need the draft, we need something to watch on TV. And I get it; it's entertainment. But if that was the logic, why did March Madness not go on? Because that's entertainment. Why did the NBA not say, "Hey, we'll go play indoors with no fans. That's entertainment, and we'll just put it on TV"? Times like this, we're in a once in a lifetime crisis. You have to do measures that you haven't seen before.
All right. Before we get to the Saints, and there's a lot to get to, we're going to hear from Emmanuel Sanders in just a bit and talk about Taysom Hill and some other hot topics with the black and gold. I want to ask you, as an athlete, and I'm curious about this. You can't work out, but during the old CBA, of course, you could go to your local gym. You weren't quarantined. These days, if you're a pro athlete, or really even more importantly, maybe a college athlete who's trying to, maintain his shape and his fitness, where do you work out? How do you stay active? I mean, you work with guys getting them ready for the combine, but in these times, is it possible at all to do anything?
I think a lot of guys probably have some type of fitness equipment at home. I know I always just kept a standard bench and some free weights just for off-season times or during the summer, because you would usually end in June and you would go back towards the later in July. So there were things that you wanted to stay in shape and just keep some type of fitness. I think a lot of guys will find some space to keep their cardio up and go run somewhere. But I don't think it's a real big problem for a lot of guys. There's not a whole lot of guys I played with in my 10 years that were showing up at Gold's Gym or 24-hour Fitness to go get their workouts in. They usually had things ready to roll at home.
Hey, that's how Justin and I roll, though. So we're not going to talk about that too. It was Max Day for us today, wasn't it, Justin? It was.
Yeah.
All right. Let's turn to the black and gold. Emmanuel Sanders. Before we hear from him, this is huge. We've been talking about a compliment to Michael Thomas for a few years now. They tried to bring Des Bryant in. That was unfortunate. You had Brandon Marshall. That didn't work out. They tried to have these, veterans. Ted Ginn had his moments. Traquan Smith had his moments. But to get a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, if you look at a jigsaw puzzle of the New Orleans Saints, Scott Shanle, this was the last piece in a lot of ways.
Yeah, especially offensively, when you look at everybody's been waiting for another complimentary piece to Michael Thomas. And, I felt like last year that Michael Thomas didn't need a complimentary piece because he still was 10 receptions a game. And then Jared Cook, when he was healthy, I felt like he was that complimentary piece. And then Alvin Kamara didn't quite have the same level of success last year that we saw in his previous two seasons. So I think just the addition of Emmanuel Sanders, you know what, his numbers may be down next year as a Saint, that he may not blow you out of the water with fantasy stats because there's only one football to go around to all those different players I just mentioned. But what he is going to do is he's going to make every defense that the Saints face next year have respect for him. And that's going to open up options for all those other guys I just mentioned. So it's pick your poison with this Saints offense. There's a lot of talented players, and he just adds one more piece to that.
You mentioned, though, Michael Thomas hasn't needed the compliment, but now that he has it, I mean, how dangerous is Michael Thomas going to be now?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to see more single coverage, and teams are going to have to respect Jared Cook, a healthy Alvin Kamara, and Emmanuel Sanders who can run those intermediate routes. And we can all agree that Drew Brees, if there's any decline in his game, it's the long ball. And Emmanuel Sanders is going to be able to run all those short intermediate routes, those one-on-one matchups. And once he develops that timing with Drew, I think you'll see him be a key possession receiver on third and medium type distances.
Well, Emmanuel Sanders hails from Houston, played at SMU, is familiar with the New Orleans area. Talked to Colin Cowherd, and we appreciate some snippets from this interview here. But here's Emmanuel Sanders on, first of all, being excited about the possibility of being that missing piece for the Saints.
Yeah, I'm really excited. To play in the Dome and to play with Drew Brees and Sean Payton's offense, opposite Michael Thomas with Alvin Kamara in the backfield. Like, who wouldn't be excited, And so I know that it's exciting times. I know on paper we look really good, but, right now I'm getting ready to go outside and run because I know that we got to put the work in order to attain what we want to attain, and I'm all in for it.
Shanle, sounds like a good locker room guy, everything the Saints are looking for. And I see a pattern here, my partner. Emmanuel Sanders, once upon a time, played for the Steelers, Super Bowl, played for the Broncos, Super Bowl, played for the Niners, went to the Super Bowl, and now he's in New Orleans. I kind of like the pattern here.
I love that pattern. I didn't realize that before, but if that can be the key to get this team over the last 3-year hump, I'm all for it. I think he adds just you heard him speaking there, and I think this team, the Saints, the organization has done a good job of adding good athletes, but more so high quality, high character guys to that locker room. And I think that's why they'll have another season of success, because it's fun to play with guys like that. It's fun to go to work with guys like that.
Here's another good pattern. Apparently, Emmanuel Sanders' suitors in free agency were those Green Bay Packers, were those Dallas Cowboys, two teams that are obviously going to be big rivals for the Saints next season. Here's what he told Colin Cowherd on why he picked the Saints over the Packers and the Cowboys.
Once New Orleans called, and I'm from Houston and 6 hours away, and to be in the Dome and being with Drew Brees and being in New Orleans back down south, and 6 hours away from my family, it just everything just worked out that way, and it was a perfect situation for me, and that's what I was kind of waiting on. And so, I see it as a blessing.
What he was waiting on. Shanle, you're a part of this, my friend. Back in 2006, New Orleans was not a free agent destiny for anybody. Drew Brees wanted to go to Miami. He didn't want to go to New Orleans. Nobody really wanted to go to New Orleans, obviously. What about a transformation for this franchise? And I know it's been, what are we looking at? 14 years is a long time, but it really shows what Sean Payton and frankly Drew Brees have built, and a lot of you guys built over the years, that New Orleans is a big destination. I mean, you heard Sanders, he was just waiting for the phone call.
Yeah, I think the first thing I think of when I hear him say that, and just hearing you reference that, Mike, is, well, I'll share this. When we had our Super Bowl reunion this past year, we all had the team party, and Coach Payton got up there and spoke and thanked us and talked about things that we did. And one of the things him and both Mickey Loomis had mentioned was our legacy as Super Bowl champions. It will always be what we did for a region and a city, and the first Saints team to ever win a Super Bowl. There will never be another first team to do it. You guys are it. But they talked about more so our legacy and what we did for the Saints organization and franchise. And that is, Mickey talked about when they talked to free agents before we had won a Super Bowl, it was hard. They had to overpay guys. That was the only way guys were coming, is if they were the top bidder. He said now it is a landmark. It is a destination city for guys to come play football. And that all started in what we did in 2006, and then obviously win a championship in 2009. So to hear Emmanuel Sanders talk about it's a place he wanted to play, as a player, I take pride in that. I know a lot of other guys take pride in that. And that all started, and something I never thought about until Sean and Mickey talked to us about it that night. And so it feels good that we were able to change that tide in the way people looked at the organization.
I'm glad you brought up that night, because I was going to bring this up in the podcast, but I didn't know when to bring it up, and now's a good time. Didn't Sean Payton kind of bust on you during the ceremony that Shanle was a quiet guy back in the day, but now he's Mr. Twitter? Didn't he have fun with you at the ceremony for that?
Yeah. Coach Payton kind of turned. It was a fun night. It was awesome. It turned into a roast. Guys grabbing the mic and jumping up on stage and roasting each other. And Coach Payton had his fill of it, jumping back up in between bites of his steak. I mean, he was on a roll that night. So he said to me, we got Shanle out here. He was Mr. Media now. Never said 10 words the 7 years I was with him, and now he can't stay off Twitter. So yeah, he was busting me up that night.
Well, I was hoping he'd say now he's on the podcast and he's been listening, but you never know who's listening. That's what's funny about these podcasts. So, we could do a whole podcast on this. We'll get to more Saints things in a little bit, though. But, when you talk about, your role in the media and why you're vocal now, there was a different mindset when you're a player, and a lot of players are like this. You can cut loose now, but why the change? Because some guys change more than others. Shanle, you know that.
Well, to me, it's much easier to be vocal as a retired player. You and you're more mature. As a young guy, I felt the pressure of the NFL. I knew the NFL stood for not for long, so I was all about grinding. I was about being a performer, putting that work in, and just closing my mouth, head down, and work hard. And I always thought no team is ever going to get rid of me because they didn't like something I said or a comment I made. So I just tried to work hard, be a good leader, be a good teammate. And those were the things I lived by as a player. And then when it was all done, I'm like, hey, you can't cut me now. I'm going to say what the hell I want.
That's what we love about this podcast. It's full reign here. And you know what I love about this podcast too is that you and I generally agree on, I would say 90% of the things, but there's always that 10%. And part of that 10%, two words: Taysom Hill. And Sean Payton said this week that Taysom Hill's going to probably be his backup. We've debated who the veteran backup should be so Taysom can be Taysom, but now Payton's saying he's going to be the backup, or at least give him the opportunity to win the backup job. What do you think of that? Because we need Taysom to be Taysom, Shanle.
What do I think of that? I don't think I'm buying it just yet. I'm not buying it at all because of what he's been. Can you imagine putting your backup quarterback in the game with your starting quarterback and running him on halfback leads and sweeps and all these
No.
different plays? I mean, you can't do it. Unless they're going to do it and just have a scout team quarterback that they're familiar with. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, but he can't be the backup quarterback and continue to be in the role he is. So I'm against him being the number 2 if it means taking him off the field.
No doubt about it. I mean, that's the allure of having him. And there's so much debate, and you and I debate this because I think part of me wants to see it because it would be exciting. Because if we're not going to have Drew Brees anymore in New Orleans, let's at least have fun and watch Taysom. I mean, that's going to be must-watch football every week. But you've always maintained that you don't see him long-term being that franchise quarterback. I think it's more of a want-to from me. But yeah, I just feel like, there's been so much excitement with him the past couple of years. I'd hate to take that away. Well, another hot topic I want to get to, Von Bell signs with the Cincinnati Bengals, and Malcolm Jenkins got more money in New Orleans. I mean, how surprised are you with that?
I was a little bit surprised. I was surprised at the length of contract they gave Malcolm. I think, what is Malcolm going in his 12th year, 33 years old maybe? I mean, he's an aging player, and they committed to him like he was a 26-year-old player. But I think a lot of it was two things. One, they were kicking themselves the last 5 years for ever letting him walk. So it's kind of a come back home, we're sorry type thing. But number two, it's what he's going to bring to that team leadership wise. He's going to make Marcus Williams and Lattimore and all the young guys on that defensive side of the ball. He is going to show them what it's like to be a pro, how to elevate your game, how to put the work in the film room, how to be accountable. He's going to be a coach on the field. So he got rewarded financially for some of those things that he's going to bring that maybe Von Bell, maturity and age-wise, isn't going to bring. But I think Von Bell, it was going to be tough for him to come back based on Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's play, and then obviously Malcolm becoming available. That kind of spelled the end for Von.
Was it, Malcolm, we're sorry, we're just going to give you some bonus money because we never should have signed Jarris Byrd?
Yeah, I think so. You look at that was probably it. And if you ask Sean and Mickey, they will probably tell you letting Malcolm walk was the biggest mistake they ever made, and they had a chance to right that wrong, and financially it was a benefit for Malcolm.
Yeah, I just thought of a different question in our next segment because, on this podcast, folks, we're not by the book, man. We're not structured. We're flexible. We'll go off the page a little bit because, Justin, you know what time it is. More likely time. These are 3 hypothetical questions, and I may throw a bonus one in this week because it's the off season, and we like to have a little more fun with you. But we always like to have fun, but we always are trying to have more fun. But 3 hypothetical questions, and Justin gets to go first. And I just thought of this one kind of right when Shanle was talking there, and this is going to be a fun one. I don't know what Shanle's going to say. Shanle always surprises me a little bit, and Justin's turned into like the Todd McShay recently with these answers. I throw him a year ago. I don't know if he could have handled some of these, but man, I could throw him a slider, a curve, a splitter. He knocks them all out of the park now. So my first, more likely, which career would you rather have? Roman Harper's or Malcolm Jenkins?
Man, I feel like you just gave me the announcer curse. Like right when you're praising me, this is when I'm going to screw up, give the wrong answer.
Just thought of it on the fly there. Yeah.
No, that's a good one. That's tough. I love Roman Harper as a player, and obviously Malcolm Jenkins is good. Ooh, maybe
You're
Malcolm Jenkins. Right, I am stalled. Well, I'm trying to think back of like plays, and
it's hard to go first, man. It's hard to be first in line. It is. It's hard.
No, it is. But I think I'll go with Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, obviously, the fact that, and we've talked about it many times, Sean Payton regrets getting rid of him goes to show what kind of talent he was. He was great for the Eagles all those years. I don't know. I know as soon as I give my answer, Shanle will probably have a better response, and then I'll regret my answer
I have no
immediately.
idea what Shanley's going to say. So you go Malcolm Jenkins.
Yeah, I'm
You
going
go
Malcolm
Malcolm.
Jenkins.
All right, Shanley. More likely, whose career would you rather have, Malcolm Jenkins or Roman Harper's?
I'm going to go with Malcolm Jenkins, and I thought about it while Justin was talking, and I think if we had Roman Harper on here himself, I think he really would say that he would rather have Malcolm Jenkins' career than his. He had an outstanding career. Roman
Mhm.
was a great player, one of the best teammates I've ever had. Would
Of
go into
course.
any locker room in the NFL and fit in great, and everybody would love him. But when you look at Malcolm, I think first of all, Malcolm's won 2 Super Bowls. Okay, he's not done yet. Hopefully
Yep.
he gets a third with the Saints. But I think what Malcolm did, going as a first round pick, and then going to Philly, becoming the leader, becoming a Pro Bowl safety, becoming one of the names you mentioned as one of the better safeties in the league. I think you have to go with Malcolm, and I think Harper may take Malcolm's career based on financials alone. So I'm going to go with Malcolm.
Here's the thing. It's really not that hard a question, but what makes it hard is we all love Roman Harper. And Roman
Yeah,
Harper
that's true.
is really my favorite interview besides Scott Shanley in the history of the New Orleans Saints. Roman Harper and I had so many fun times. I remember when you guys, I think you were still with the team, when you guys had the dual scrimmages in New England. And I know you were with the team. Roman Harper had this little, like one of those dry fit things with Joe Vitt, like a caricature he'd wear in his jersey. It was like a caricature of Joe Vitt with his hands up in the air. I wanted to use it for a sideline hit. And I kind of said it to him in passing in the locker room. After practice, Roman Harper walked up the hill and he said, "Hey, you wanted this, right?" And I mean, that's the way he was, man. I mean, he's a good guy. You had a bunch of good guys in that locker room, but he was the best. But yeah, the first round pick, the money, the 2 rings. Now, if Roman would have won a ring with Carolina, that argument would be a little more interesting. But I think you're right. And he's also very self-effacing. He would laugh at himself and probably say he wish he had Malcolm's hair, whatever, man. He'd laugh at himself there a little bit. So I pick Malcolm Jenkins too. All right, man, I got all these notes here, so I don't know really which way to go. So I'm going to go with this one for my second more likely. Boy, if you're a quarterback in the free agent market, you got to be Tom Brady. You got to be Teddy Bridgewater. You got to be Philip Rivers. And after that, good luck, because the numbers game is really tough in the NFL, especially with the Chargers saying they want Tyrod Taylor to seemingly be their quarterback next year. Who's going to have a better season next year or a better opportunity? More likely Cam Newton or Jameis Winston, Justin Thomas?
Oh wow.
Throwing the heat today, man.
Yeah, seriously. You know what? I'm surprised, honestly, that the Chargers are going with Tyrod Taylor and not picking up either Jameis or Cam. And we all have poked fun at Jameis, but there's definitely talent there. I'm surprised he's not on a roster, at least in a backup position. I think Cam obviously showed that he was the better player, probably athletically and also mentally. He didn't turn over the ball as much. I mean, hell, he went to a Super Bowl. I think, given that and the fact that Jameis Winston is still having issues with turnovers, I would think Cam Newton would be better set up to be successful in the next year.
You would think. I just think. I don't know. I'll hear Shanley's opinion. I got a lot of opinions on this, but what do you think? Who's going to have a better opportunity this year? I want to say a few things, but Shanley's never going to be swayed by me. He's like, whatever, neighbors. But you go. What do you? Who's going to have a better opportunity? I think is a good way to put it. More likely, Cam Newton or Jameis Winston.
Yeah, the key word is opportunity, because when I start thinking of all these different variables and I look down the line of who would I take and who's going to have more chance to have a better career, Jameis Winston has the higher upside. But when you talk about this fall, who has a better opportunity, I'm going to go with Cam Newton. But even I don't know about his health. If he shows a clean bill of health, I think he definitely has a better opportunity, because you, as the Chargers or the Dolphins or somebody who misses out on a rookie quarterback high in the draft, you can sell Cam Newton to your fan base much easier than you can sell Jameis Winston at this point in their careers.
You know, the guy I really want to be the starter because he has the best name of any quarterback in the NFL is the Chargers backup Easton Stick. I mean, come on, man. Is that a made up name? That is the best football name for a quarterback. He actually should be a baseball player, be even better. But Easton Stick is the backup quarterback right now for the Chargers. Here's my thing, and this is a style thing, but if Cam Newton wasn't so kind of over the top with everything, whether it's celebrations, whether the way he carries himself, whether he's the way he handles himself after a loss. I wonder if Bill Belichick, he takes flyers on guys like that all the time, and he needs a quarterback right now. Shanle, I mean, to me, I always thought Belichick would take a flyer on one of these guys. We talked about Jameis Winston being a backup in our last podcast. I still think that'd be a great idea. But with Taysom, I don't know if they're going to do that or not. They're going to probably get a lesser guy in terms of name and price. But I thought Belichick may take a flyer on one of those guys. I was kind of surprised. Maybe he still will. I don't know.
I still think there's a chance. I don't see Cam Newton fitting in with the Patriots because Bill Belichick doesn't usually bring in I want to say flair, but kind of the drama that comes around Cam. I don't see him saying, I can continue to be hard-nosed and preach all these tough things every day in my locker room, but then bring in Cam Newton to be the leader of the team. So I don't think Cam Newton will fit in at all with New England. I think Jameis Winston could fit into New England because of where he is and because he seems more coachable.
Yeah, I mean, the misnomer about Jameis, because he's done so many knucklehead things off the field, the guy works hard. I'm not saying Cam Newton doesn't, but he works hard, man. That guy has a real passion, wants to be great. And I think maybe that's to his detriment sometimes as he pushes himself too hard and puts too much pressure on himself, as you saw at different times in Tampa Bay. All right, I'm going to kind of flip the switch here a little bit. I'm going to take a little pressure off Justin because I'm going to give my opinion on this, which is in line with my more likely question. I may be crazy here, okay? I live in Tampa, but I've covered the Saints for the whole Sean Payton, Drew Brees era. And knowing that and knowing the Bucs, I'm going to say this. Yeah, Tom Brady, it's great that he's in Tampa. But Tom Brady right now, offensive line's not that great in Tampa. Tom Brady right now, his running game is not good at all in Tampa. Not good. Not even close to what the Saints have. So I'm going to say Emmanuel Sanders is a bigger free agent deal than the Bucs getting Tom Brady. More likely, Justin, you first. Am I crazy?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, man.
Straight jacket crazy. Tell him, Justin.
Man.
No, think about it, Mike. I mean, the Saints, the last 2 years are 13-3. I think the only expectation now is for the Saints to win a Super Bowl. Tampa Bay hasn't been to the playoffs, since John Gruden was there? I mean, what is that, 20-something?
Yeah, Gruden, 2007, I believe, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean...
When Chris Sims was the quarterback, by the way.
Golly.
And by the way, Cadillac Williams was the running back then. Anyway, keep going. Yeah, that's fine.
Whoa. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. Look how long they've been... It's been since they've even been in the playoffs. They need something to change.
Was the wide receiver back then, but that's how long.
And so Tom Brady is a huge, I think, spark for them. Yes, you're right. There's a lot of other glaring issues that Tampa Bay needs to fix. But if you look at the level of excitement, it's got to be off the record there in Tampa versus, I mean, look, I'm happy that Emmanuel Sanders is coming to the Saints. I think he's a good pickup. But we were already expecting to go to the Super Bowl this year, even if we didn't get him. I think Tom Brady going to Tampa is way bigger than Emmanuel Sanders going to New Orleans.
Okay, I heard straight jacket crazy from the Shanle gallery in Dallas. Before I get to you, I'm going to say this. I get that the Saints were a Super Bowl contender last couple of years, but they weren't in the Super Bowl last year. But there's a big reason why. Yeah, Michael Thomas puts up the numbers, and yeah, Jared Cook is great and all this. Emmanuel Sanders, it's like Jerry Maguire. You complete me, man. We're complete now. This running game is unbelievable. This offensive line is top-notch. You got a tight end who's great. He's young. He's in his prime. Drew Brees is Drew Brees. I'm sorry, Emmanuel Sanders, bigger deal than Tom Brady. I'm crazy, Shanle?
Absolutely crazy. Nuts. Yeah, I'll tell you, Justin said it probably better than I would have said it had I gone first. But Emmanuel Sanders, the way I look at it and quantify this is, if Emmanuel Sanders were on the Saints last year, do I still think they beat Minnesota? Probably not. The defense didn't play well enough. The offensive line didn't play well enough. And if I'm in the locker room, I put myself in the player's position. If I'm in the Saints locker room and I see, hey, we signed Emmanuel Sanders, I'm excited. Hey, we added another piece that'll help us. If I'm in the Tampa Bay locker room and we just signed Tom Brady, I'm like, hell yes. We got a chance to win a Super Bowl. We got a chance to do something special. And that's not only as a player, every coach believes that. The guy selling suites, the guy selling tickets, the guy doing the media guide, everybody in that organization now believes they can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, but no, who's going to protect him, and what running game is he going to have? That's my thing. Is like the Saints are complete, the Bucs are incomplete. That's my argument with this.
Yeah, but you said who's a better acquisition.
But given the situation right now, if they draft like a Cam Akers from Florida State and they get a good right tackle, then yeah. But I'm saying right now, I should always preface these things. I do this on the fly. But right now, I like the Saints so much better with this extra receiver because it's exactly what they needed. And yeah, Tom Brady's exactly what the Bucs need, but man, they need so much more. They need a lot more.
So you probably should have phrased the question then, who's in a better position now to win the Super Bowl?
Okay.
What team is better off?
Shanle called me crazy, though. That was fun, though. I like that.
What team is better off? Yeah.
The Bucs are just such – I mean, I think it's so exciting. And, you know, we talk about this. This is kind of the theme of this podcast is that football's on the back burner. But, man, there would be the Bucs' luck, guys, if – they lose Bo Jackson in the 80s because they had a knucklehead owner. They don't get Parcells because they kind of botched that up. And Parcells is kind of flighty too with what jobs he takes. If they get Tom Brady and don't have a football season, the Bucs are just jinxed forever, man. They're like the Cubs of the NFL. It'd be unbelievable, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they go 8-8 or 9-7 because of what you said. They need more pieces. And Tom Brady last year, he was not Tom Brady that we all picture him to be. Like I said, I think this could be a Michael Jordan to the Washington Wizards situation. But I'll tell you, as a football fan, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing this fall, I don't care what their record is. I'm going to be tuning in to watch them. And in the past, that was never the case. I didn't ever want to turn on the TV and watch those ugly ass XFL uniforms they wear. And now I'll tune in and watch Tom Brady and see what he can do with the Buccaneers.
All right, finally, because it's Max Day and I'm taking my medium straitjacket off so I'll look real tight and everything, I'll frame it this way, okay? Who's more complete? I like what Justin said, though. Who makes your team more complete, Emmanuel Sanders or Tom Brady? Or is it still crazy to say that?
I'm still going to go with Tom Brady.
Tom Brady? Okay. All right. I'm just throwing it out there. Just a thought, you know? Just it's like Taysom. I'm going to pin you up against a wall until you say Taysom.
What did you give me as the ultimatum on Taysom? Would you have Taysom Hill as your starting quarterback or Thomas Morstead? I think that's where you finally went.
Morstead, he's so competitive, though. He may argue on that point.
I know.
Oh, my God. Well, we're going to we may have to put that up as a poll this week. We didn't do a poll last week, and I'm kind of glad we didn't because Sean Payton kind of trumped it with the Taysom backup. But maybe we can still do that. Who's your backup? We'll put a good poll up this week on our Twitter handle, which is what, Justin?
@Dundad Podcast.
That's right. So check us out on Twitter, and we're on all the platforms: Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, Google, everything, Stitcher, all that stuff. So please subscribe, like us, tell your friends. And I hope during these times, sports can be a good escape and you enjoyed our ramblings a little bit. But we sincerely hope everybody's safe out there. This is no laughing matter, and football is secondary, but we all need kind of a diversion. And I hope this helped you a little bit in our last 40 minutes here, talking Saints, talking NFL, and other things. So for Scott Shanle and Justin Thomas, who both think I'm crazy, I assure you I'm not. I'm merely Mike Nabors, and we look forward to talking to you down the road. Thanks.